What is going on, everybody? Welcome to week 17 on Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football show here on Fantasy and Frames. I'm Jorge Edwards. This is Justin Taylor. We've been with you all season, all preseason, leading up to this very week, the week where you decide whether or not you get a fantasy championship or not. And I say you decide because you know what? You're the ones who actually make the roster decisions, but we're here to help you and to give you some advice and let you know who we think you should trust and not trust heading into week 17. So without further ado, let's hit the music. JT, my friend, how are you doing today?
Doing all right, man. Just been watching football games. I got all my Syracuse stuff on. Q starts here in about 20 minutes in their bowl game against the absolutely depleted Washington State Cougars. I'm hoping for a blowout by the Q, so I'm pumped. And we got championships coming. It was a rough Wednesday, Thursday for me. I'm not gonna lie. Got a lot of players not score very many points for me in championship games. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those weeks where it's like just holding on for dear life as everyone scores crazy low. I put up in 2 leagues that I was the favorite in, was first all year, number 1 in points, overall best balls. Put up my lowest point total of the year last week to lose in the semis. And then another league, I was a number 1 point in points, number 2 in record by 1 game. Also put up my lowest point total, 100 points less than the first round bye week, and I lost. No. So it's brutal. Couple brutal weeks, but hey, when you get to this point in the season, you're just praying that you can keep making it every week, and you're hoping your guys play as we're going to see. There's quite a few guys out of nowhere, all of a sudden not playing this week, and if you don't have a deep bench, you could be in trouble here in the championship round.
No, 100%. For me, a lot of combo offense in IDP leagues, and then IDP only, and then Dynasty IDP only. I was the number 1 seed, and all my teams went off during my bye week, and then they forgot, hey, it's the semifinals. You need to win this thing called the league, and you need to win the championship. And everybody decided to just like put up stinkers, like Nick Cross and his 1 tackle and 1 pass deflection with and of course,
I'm feeling you there. I crossed on a lot of teams. TJ Watt just doing nothing for me this weekend. Alex Highsmith had an okay game. But yeah, I'm the same way as you. All my teams went off I was the 1 or 2 seed and I was on the bye week. Like I had 1 league. I think I scored 345 on the bye week and I put up 244 last week in the semis and lost. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, it's funny. Heading into Monday Night Football, I was all out of players they've already played, and my opponent had Brian Breeze, or however you pronounce it, from Orleans Saints, and I was up by, I want to say, like 1.75 points. Let's just call it that. And I was looking at Breeze's performance the past few weeks using Fantasy Pro Scoring, because I think that's what we use. And he had been getting like 1 point here, 2 points there. And I'm like, oh my God, could you imagine if like he doesn't put up anything? And I was, we were going back and forth in our sleeper chat for the league. Just like I preemptively said, congratulations, and they're like, oh, you're putting the hex on me because it's not over yet. I'm like, come on, man. Like you're going to win. So Breezy ended up putting up 2 points or whatever it was. It was like a couple points. And I ended up losing as the defending champion, 130 to 128. And I'm just like, that burns.
That one, that hurts, man. That hurts.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. For those who are in the podcast lead for Shoot the Gap, we got your championship coming up. And once we get that all settled and figured out, we'll obviously congratulate you next week. And then we'll start getting the information to get you a Dynasty deck plaque, which if you head over to dynastydex.com or thedynastydecks.com, use the promo code FRAMES, you get $5 off your purchase. Definitely recommend that. We see some questions popping up in the chat right now. So as we do every single time on Shoot the Gap, we keep the on-air question answering strictly for IDP Fantasy Football, individual defensive player Fantasy Football. But in the YouTube chat, we will be answering your questions there. So don't be offended if we don't answer them on air. We will get to them as we get going. But JT, we're not the first one. We're not the last ones on today. We're normally, the last ones on every Wednesday night on Fantasy Frames Wednesday, and we go over our hour mark quite often. But the people like it; they stay up late. And so, what can we say? We can't do that today because you got Keith Fleming, Joe Matz, and Kevin Tompkins doing our DFS show, DraftKings DFS show, the Daily Fix at 9 p.m. Eastern. So let's just get into some IDP news and notes. See Will in the chat. Will, what's going on? With McFadden out, who are you going to run with as the Giants linebacker to own this week? He may be a play of mine. He may be coming up in news and notes. So stay tuned for that. But let's talk about some players. And JT, you mentioned it earlier. A lot of players just popping up out of nowhere, just being declared out. So, like for example, Quay Walker out. Green Bay Packers. We saw Eric Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper kind of like go up in snap count percentage, with Cooper kind of like last week at least going above Isaiah McDuffie. So it's fair to say that both of these guys are the guys who are next in line at the linebacking position. If you had to choose one to, if you're the Quay Walker manager and you still wanted to roll with Green Bay linebackers, if you had to pick one, would you go with the upside with Cooper because he also gives you that pass rushing upside, or do you want to stick strictly with Wilson because of his, ball hawking ability? Or none of the above?
Yeah, that one's tough. I was looking at that. I was like, man, I'd probably go Cooper. I don't feel great about it, but that's probably what I'm going with.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. To answer Will's question, though, or to piggyback off of that, and again, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Micah McFadden, New York Giants, out. We've seen since Bobby Okereke was declared on IR after the season, and even with McFadden playing, Darius Mousaw, I'm horrible at pronouncing names, so I apologize if I did that. Basically took the lead in terms of snap percentages, playing 100% of snaps when he came in relief for Okereke, and then obviously last week playing 100% of snaps. And next up, Ty Summers also is potentially up this week as a second linebacker. But it's Darius Mousaw who really that's two different ways I pronounced his name in the span of a minute. This is going to go great today. But he's the one who's next in line. He's been super efficient in terms of tackle efficiency and productivity. And it's the Giants, and their defense is going to be on the field a lot. So he's going to get the tackle volume. So I'm pretty excited to potentially play him later, if you get what I'm saying. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Josie Jewell, Carolina Panthers. This one hurts. This one hurts because I've been on the Josie Jewell train of success leading up to the fantasy playoffs. He's out. The next linebacker who came up in snap percentage last week was Jacoby Windman. We should look for him to be kind of the guy there, something to pay attention to. But even then, I don't know. I'm kind of torn, especially if it's like a deep IDP league. JT, if you're rolling with like 3 linebackers or so, or an IDP flex, is the fact that Carolina's defense is basically shot to hell give you any kind of confidence that Windman could be this potential start?
I don't want to pick up any of these guys unless I'm desperation mode. You know what I'm saying? If I'm like, oh, dude, I have Josie Jewell, I have Nakobe Dean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm looking at my lineup and I'm like, crap, I have like 3 or 4 of these guys, and I'm trying to fill in a lineup. Then maybe I'm running out and grabbing somebody. But man, I would hate to play somebody that's just almost an unheard of, or somebody you haven't seen anything from this year, and then taking a chance on him in the championship round. I understand if you're just desperation because like you're like, dude, I have everybody that's hurt, I have hurt, and you're just don't have any other options. I can see going there, but man, I would only be playing those guys if I just didn't have another option whatsoever.
No, I hear you, and it's one of those things where we've talked about for the past couple weeks, especially during the playoffs and leading up to the playoffs. The old adage, start your studs versus play the matchups. And, you and I are both proponents of, there is something to be said for if you're noticing trends, and they're consistent, not just, spike weeks. These are things to pay attention to. And so that can kind of like help get you past name value. At the same time, Jacoby Windman, like I'm kind of okay not taking a chance if I'm the Josie Jewell manager and kind of like finding some upside in other positions. You mentioned Nakobe Dean. He's doubtful apparently for the Philadelphia Eagles going against the Cowboys this week. Is it basically Zach Bond and that's it for the Philadelphia Eagles?
See, that's another one. It's like some of these guys I don't feel like are just plug and play. Like, oh, okay, this guy's out, put this guy in. He's going to give you close to the same production. I don't think that's the case in some of these. I like Bond even more now because I'm like, no Dean, he's going to have to make every play. But we've seen it when they played other guys. It's like they've got nothing from them. So it's tough. I'm probably playing Bond and that's it. Like, again, I'm only going and grabbing these guys backups if like I'm either in a shallow league where you don't have very many bench spots or I'm in a league where just I have all the injuries, all these guys came up, and now there's no other linebackers out there, and I'm like grabbing at backups. Then I can see like, okay, let's let's take a shot on this guy if I have to. But man, there's a lot of guys I don't love this week, but I'm probably playing them over going and just taking an absolute, shot in the dark on some of these other guys. I mean, it's a little different. So I guess I should probably explain this a little more. It's a little different. Like I saw Will put Carly's in the chat. It's a little different when you have a guy like him who's played 2 games when EJ Speed was out for the Colts and he showed he could get you points. Like to me, I'm like, okay, well that's a backup that I feel confident playing because I've seen him do it a couple times this year already. It's a lot different feeling than when you're relying on a guy. You're like, this guy hasn't played all year. All of a sudden he's stepping in. Oh, that's a toughie. There's another guy you had here on the news list at the end of the list here. That's a guy we'll talk about when we get to him that I would probably pick up and play instead. But we can go through some of these guys. If you guys have some questions, if you're like desperation mode and you're like, do I pick up this guy or this guy? Because I'm like screwed. Throw those in the chat. We'll answer those, and I'll try to do a little bit better job of expanding on my thoughts if I know specific guys I need to get into. Jorge is on mute. I think you're on mute. But there you go. Hey, there he is. Okay.
Wow, Ricky mistake.
I saw your mouth moving, and I was like, I actually think he was meaning to talk.
Yeah, I was trying. I was. It's just me being a dumbass.
Hey, it's been a long weekend. It's like weekend. Like I saw somebody post a meme was like, I don't even know what day it is. Is it night? Is it morning? Can I have a drink yet? Can I not? What do we have planned today? Because you just don't know. This whole time between like Christmas and New Year's, it's just like I couldn't figure out today was Friday forever. I was like, what day is it? Like, do I have to be somewhere? What do I have to, we're doing the show. I'm like trying to figure out all the other stuff with everybody else. So yeah, it's just a crazy week, man. I totally understandable.
I kid you not. This morning, it was probably about like 10:30. I just got back from taking my dog to the vet. She's fine. But I sit down and I get a glass. I go to the kitchen, I get a glass, and I'm like cutting up like lemon slices and like lime slices, and I'm putting it in my glass and putting some ice, and I'm putting some Sprite in there. And I just, lemon lime soda. Why not have lemon lime fruit in your drink as well? And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. So with the fact that both my sister-in-law and mother-in-law were like, so starting early this morning, are we? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the fact that you sliced something up tells me that it's like, something you're doing fancy for like a mixed drink. And I'm like, really? You think I have booze in here? And they're like, you don't. And I'm like, no.
That's
It's
great.
yeah. So anyhow, going back to what I was saying.
That's what you get. That's what you get for trying to be fancy.
I know that, God forbid, right? The real Rob Thomas, welcome, Rob Thomas. Will, hit that like button. Thank you very much, Will. Appreciate you. Shadow, what is it? Shadow is Wicked. Fantasy and Frames. Thanks for your input. Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Going down the list here, you want to talk about New England Patriots IDP players that are basically the three that I would be okay starting in my lineup, and then all of them being questionable. Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Jelani Tavai. That's it. Those are the only ones that.
Tavai was already like on my very I've got him in a ton of leagues, and I'm like staring at him this week, and I'm like, dude, am I chancing it? Am I gonna play him? And now he's questionable, and now I'm like, oh my god, can I even I just I don't want to I'm very on the fence with him. Even if he's a go this week, I was already on the fence. Now I'm like halfway off on the other side over. Like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going over this. He's one of those guys that I'm waiting to the very last second, and if I just don't have any other option, I'll plug him into my lineup. But man, I don't feel great about it this week. And he's been all right this year, so I don't want to. I mean, I've played him in a lot of spots, but I just, oh man, I don't feel great about it.
Getting to our next player here, and I really want to pick your brain here because we've talked about this scenario multiple times during the season. EJ Speed got his first full practice today out of this week. He is questionable to start, but if he starts, you have mentioned several times that with good reason that it's very hard to trust players coming off of an injury. Normally, especially a multi-week injury, you're kind of looking at, some rust, shaking off the cobwebs, so to speak. Championship week, it's put up or shut up. If EJ Speed is good to go, are you locking and loading him as the bona fide linebacker 1 or 2 on your?
I think you have to with the year he's had. And again, I always say I hate testing these injuries. It just drives me crazy. But he's a guy, when he's been on the field, he's been a tackle machine all year. So I think I got to play him. I've got him in 2 or 3 lineups that are going for championships this week, and I'm monitoring it closely. It looks like he's going to play. If he plays, I'm getting him in my lineup. I'm playing him this week. I just, if I lose and he gets 12 tackles and I have him on the bench and I'm like,
yeah,
he was awesome all year, and then I don't play him in the championship, then I'd be upset at myself. So I am definitely, if he's good to go, especially with Carly's, he's a little banged up too. So even though he played every down last week for the Colts, he's still a little banged up too. So it's not like they're just going to sprint him in for speed if speed is a little rough. You know what I'm saying? So I think I got to go with speed.
I will say this: if Speed is out and Carly's is available in your league, on Sleeper he has dual linebacker, defensive back eligibility, which cheat code there, right?
Absolutely. There. Yeah, Will said something about it earlier. Was in the chat saying, "Oh, yeah, here it is." Yeah, Will was saying if Speed doesn't play, he takes away his cheat code of Carly's at DB, and it kind of does. But people forget he was a strong safety in college at Missouri. They drafted him thinking that they could make him into a EJ Speed type weak side linebacker. So that's they kind of drafted thinking they could put some weight on him, and he kind of could be that spot. So that's why I think he gets that LBDB there, which is nice if you're in a league that gives you both for him. But he's a guy. He's a guy I like going forward, especially if the Colts eventually move on from Speed. I like him dynasty leagues moving forward. So keep your eye out for him in the offseason.
And in fact, if you, I'm about to pick up my phone and see if he's available, because even though I'm out of, the championship matchup for my IDP Dynasty League, it's still Dynasty. You still play. You still want to accumulate players. And so definitely, if you're Also,
if you got a spot, you can stash him here before the season's over.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Colts are going to do in off season, so there's a chance he just goes back into the year as a backup. But if you can put him on your lineup and drop him, if he ends up being just a backup, but if he ends up being a starter,
Right.
we've seen how many tackles this Colts defense gets. He's a guy I would definitely want in my lineup. I picked him up early in the season, like maybe week 5 or 6 in a league, and then he got hurt like 2 weeks later. I just put him on my IR for the rest of the year until he just came off. So yeah, he's a guy I've been stashing in a few places.
Yeah, definitely. Going to the Dallas Cowboys here. Oh my God, Carly's is available. That is so awesome. Okay, great. Sorry, a little in-show rostering going on here. Dallas Cowboys: Nick Vigil, Eric Hendricks, Donovan Wilson are questionable. I was going to ask the question: do you feel comfortable? Well, I'll ask it. Do you feel comfortable starting Morris Leo Fowl, the rookie out of Notre Dame, this week?
He's another guy. If I'm a desperation mode, I'm playing him. I have to be honest. He's playing better than I thought he would be. He was like one of my lowest rated guys coming into the draft. Like one of my cousins is a co-owner for me on an IDP Dynasty team. He's like, "What do you think about this guy?" I'm like, "Man, everything I've read about him, everything I've watched, he just is like super low graded on everything." So he's actually been a little bit better than I thought he would be production wise. I don't want to have to play him. I don't want to
Yeah.
have to play him this week if I can't help it. But I mean, again, if you're in like a start 3 or start 4 linebacker league and you've got a bunch of injuries and you're like, I gotta play a guy, he's playable. I'll say that he's definitely playable. He's not my first option, but he's playable.
Well, let's talk about somebody who could potentially be a first option for you. Anthony Walker, Miami Dolphins, is out. We saw when Walker was out for a few games this season, Tyrell Dodson came in replacement of Walker. And we were seeing basically a reunion of the two former Seattle Seahawk linebackers just tearing it up in terms of tackles. Would Tyrell Dodson be somebody that you'd be interested in streaming at the linebacker position if you're the Kobe Dean manager or the Jewel or the Walker manager?
Mm-hmm. I see. I would much rather stream him than some of those other guys just because we've seen what he's done when he got playing time this year. He's been very productive. I tell you what, and I'll own it. I swung and missed hard. I thought when Walker got hurt and he played well, I was like, this is his job the rest of the year. I was like, they're not going to go back to Anthony Walker. Dodson is going to stay the starter. I was completely wrong. The second Walker got back, he took every snap and Dodson just sat on the bench again. I couldn't believe that. I was telling everybody to pick up Dodson because I thought for sure he was going to be the guy the rest of the year for the Dolphins, and he wasn't. But if Walker's out, I definitely think Dodson's a great pickup, especially going against the Browns this week. Jerome Ford going to try to pound the rock with him. I have a feeling this game's going to be kind of ugly. I would definitely Dotson would be right at the top of my list of guys to go pick up off the waiver wire if he's out there.
All right, and then we get to the last piece here. Linebacker Luke Gifford for the Tennessee Titans. News came out today that he is designated to be the green dot wearer or the play caller for the defense here. One, does this excite you for fantasy purposes here? And then two, we talk about the other linebackers that are here for the Tennessee Titans, and it looks like the next several ones on the depth chart are out, or at least trending towards being out, which means rookie Cedric Gray out of the University of North Carolina could have an opportunity here. And I think both of us were pretty high on Gray. At least I know I was in the preseason. One, what are your thoughts on Gifford? Two, what are your thoughts on Gray?
Yeah, so Gifford was one of the guys I said when we were kind of talking earlier about, hey, who are some guys you'd want to go get? We've seen Gifford this year. When he's actually played, he's played well. So, and we thought before he got hurt that he was in line to take over this linebacking, head of the linebacker role. Got hurt, went back out. He's back in green dot this week, like you said. I'm picking him up. If I need somebody, Gifford's the guy I want. You go back and look at his game log. He's only played in 3 games this year. One of them was part-time, but the 2 full-time games he played in, 10 tackles, 8 tackles, pass defense, and a pick. So he's put up numbers when he's actually played. Now, it hasn't been a lot, but when he's played, he's put up good numbers. So he's a guy I like a ton. And then going to Cedric Gray. Cedric Gray was a guy I liked a ton coming out of UNC. I just thought he was a really good player. I thought he would take maybe a year or 2 to adjust the NFL. I thought he would be a good guy to kind of stash on your dynasty teams. I like him a lot. He's a guy I would take a chance on possibly this week. He's definitely a dynasty stash for me for the future. I like Gray a lot. And then Gifford, I mean, they seem to like him. Like he said, even though he didn't play a lot this year because of injuries, when he did play pretty well, and they seem to like him. At least this coaching staff, if they stick around, they do.
All right, so that's going to wrap up IDP news and notes. And of course, folks, please be mindful of any information that comes out in the next couple of days in terms of injuries. And of course, you can always hit up JT or myself on X. I'm at Jorge B. Edwards, JT at JT Orange. Hit up Fantasy and Frames at Fantasy and Frames, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions or talk about any of IDP content or any content, to be honest with you, that we can help you with. All right, Money Mirage time. All right, so I just have one statement here, and so folks, for those who are watching for the first time, and for those who've been watching all season, Money Mirage, very simple. We're going to give you a statement, and we're going to tell you whether we think it's a money statement or a mirage. Kind of like true or false, except money and mirage, because we wanted to be catchy, and therefore there you go. So I'm going to give you a statement right here, JT, and you tell me whether or not it's a money statement or a mirage statement. It is better to trust a player's previous performance versus a team that they're facing again during the season over looking at recent trends in performance of that player. Is that a money statement or a mirage statement?
Ooh. I usually like to look at how they played against that opponent in the past, especially if they're division rivals, where they've already played each other once a season, because usually those guys tend to play similar, especially on defense. They seem to play similar every time they play a team. But where I will go with the recent performance history over the past performance versus a certain team is if that performance was way earlier in the year, and they've been on just a super big downslide, like 4+ weeks where they have not performed well, then I'm probably going to push it and go, I'm going to ignore the previous performance versus that team. If they've just been okay, it's not been great, it hasn't been exactly what you wanted, but they haven't been awful, I would probably give them an uptick if they played well in the past against that team. So it really depends on just recency. Are they playing decent at all? Or are they just been garbage? Or is it they've just been underperforming a little bit, but they usually crush against this team? I'm going to play them because they always crush against this division opponent.
Yeah, so I'll take your mirage answer, and I think I'm going to double down on it. And the reason why we chose this as a Money Mirage question is because there are a lot of divisional matchups here. Bills, Jets, that's one that definitely we'll be talking about a little bit later. Vikings, Packers. And, a lot of us every week, this question pops up, but it pops up more importantly during championship week. I will say this. There is something to be said, like you said, for division opponents and how they play, whatnot. But I think it's a mirage statement also because you have to look at the context in which these players played and performed. Were they on a limited snap count? Did they get injured during the game? Like what actually happened to the game that caused them to have a not so hot performance, or conversely, a good performance? And then, let's say they had a good performance earlier in the season, but they've been on the downward trajectory. Is that because limited snaps? Is that because they've been replaced? There's so many different scenarios. And then the vice versa situation. They perform poorly, but recently they've been trending in the right direction in terms of being reliable fantasy options. I think the context there really does matter. So I don't think you could just say blindly that, yes, it's better to look solely on past performance. You kind of have to like read in between the lines and see what's really going on there to parse out, parse out that answer. So give me a Mirage there as well, JT. That for me, I feel like is the biggest linear Mirage question right now, because a lot of people, that's what we like to do. We like to see how these players do and how they line up in certain situations and how they perform. And I mean, that's basically the gist of fantasy analysis. We look at stats, and we look at performance trends, and we look at all this stuff. And there's, sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other. But for me, I think it makes more sense to, when in doubt, look at trends currently, because you never know what happened earlier in the season. So that's just something to.
I was going to bring one up. We just had a question. I just answered in the chat, but I thought we were going to. Let's bring it up anyway. Nikki Banks. Nikki, thanks for joining the show. She was asking the question. She said, "This is a team defense." She said, "Why are the Chargers rated ahead of the Raiders this week as a team defense?" She says, "I just don't understand it. I don't see it." What are your thoughts? I typed mine in the chat, but what are your thoughts on that? Chargers going against the Pats in New England, and then the Raiders on the road, but they're at the Saints. It's a Saints team that is obviously struggling. No Kamara. I think Eckler's to start again, but Raiders are missing Max Crosby and a couple other guys.
Right. So let's start with the Chargers first. So why everybody's so high on the Chargers is because what is the best way for DSTs to get you high point values? It's, turnovers, it's interceptions, it's sacks. And you look at, the edge rushers for the Chargers. You have, a rejuvenated, healthy for once, Joey Bosa, and you have Khalil Mack on the other side. Both of these guys, one's going to command a double team, the other one's going to get one-on-one opportunity with his offensive lineman. And you look at the offensive tackles, rather, for the New England Patriots, Viridian Lowe and Demontre Jacobs, giving up 11 pressures the past 3 weeks. They're two of the lowest graded offensive tackles per PFF on the season. These guys just... you look at every single play. If it wasn't for Drake May being able to scramble, he would be getting pulverized behind that offensive line, which is kind of why I think he does scramble so much, is to get away from pressures. But that being the case, there's with the caliber of edge rushers that the Chargers have, it's Joey Bosa, it's Khalil Mack. I mean, these guys are potentially future Hall of Famers at the position. Going against such poor offensive blocking, it just makes too much sense, because either the quarterback hits or the tackles for losses or the sacks will add up for that DST, making it a pretty juicy matchup there for Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, I know the Saints are bad right now and the Raiders have a decent matchup. My biggest thing is I'm unleashing Bosa and Khalil Mack this week in IDP leagues. I just, like you said, Pat's offensive line has been horrible, and teams have been able to get home against them. Most likely, they're going to be playing from behind. May's going to have to force some stuff. We've seen the Chargers this year, too. Even when they've given up points, they've got enough takeaways, sacks, and other things that they've turned in pretty good performances as a defensive team, start team. So, I probably, even though I really do like that Raiders matchup versus the Saints, I think I got to stick with the Chargers and go Chargers.
Yeah, 100%. I want to look up how many sacks the Patriots have given up on the season, because I want to say it's high.
I just was looking at the statistic the other day. I think they're top 5.
Yeah. So, Nikki, that pretty much,
and they were like number 1 or 2. Well, I don't think they were ever number 1 or 2 sacks given up, but they were the worst rated offensive line. Now, like you said, Drake May voiding people and running has saved them in a lot of times, but they've been one of the worst rated offensive lines, and I think they've had 2 of the lowest rated tackles. in the league this year. So even if they haven't totally given up sacks, they've given up a million pressures and a lot of other things. So they've really, really struggled this year. That O-line has.
Yep. So Nikki, hopefully that helps you out this week. And if the Chargers defense is available, I would recommend getting them. So with JT. So yeah, that's Money Mirage. Folks, we know it's fantasy week and we know we ramble. So let's just get into what you all are here to listen to. And that is our IDP plays and fades for week 17 championship week. All right. So first of all, if you haven't already, JT, who has been cranking these out all season long, has been basically helping you win your matchups every single week. Does our at fantasyandframes.com, our IDP plays and fades of the week. You could find week 17's version online right now at fantasyandframes.com. So you go to the homepage, literally, boom, it's right there. Just a great resource. JT, you do such a great job calling these plays and fades, and people, you should be checking that out. And then as far as, let's say you're dealing with an injury or two, with checking out the IDP waiver wire article this week, I just put out on Monday, something to pay attention to again. And of course, our IDP rankings updated daily over at fantasyandframes.com. So definitely check out, fantasyandframes.com for all your IDP needs and content needs. And let's get into defensive lineman plays and fades this week. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? Because
I'll go first. It's funny because I was looking at this and I think we're going to talk about our two plays are on the same team in the same matchup, and then our two fades are on the opposite teams, but in the same matchup. So I was like, we're on the same wavelength here. Also, thanks. I appreciate it. Plays and fades. New thing for me running it this year. But I had a good time. It was fun. It definitely helps out in a few leagues when they're just mulling over all these guys and which guys will play or not. So it's definitely helped me in my IDP leagues this year as well. So I appreciate that. I'll start with it here because I'll let you jump in. I'll do my play and then I'll let you jump in and do your play because we'll just talk about it because it's the same thing. Is I'm all over Chop Robinson for the Dolphins this week as a D-line LB on sleeper D. He should be a D end if you have it correctly on your My Fantasy League and your RSO teams. I love Chop this week going against the Browns. The Browns #1 in the league in sacks given up. This team is just struggled all year. Doesn't matter who's playing QB. They are giving up sacks at an incredible rate. I love Chop to get home. The rookie, he has just been on a tear since week 9. He has 6 sacks in his last 8 games. He has just been phenomenal. He's able to get 2 sacks and 6 tackles against the Eagles in week 16 against a really good O-line. I mean, he just like Chop has just been the guy. He's been getting in there. He's done really well. And then again, the Browns on the other side, 63 sacks given up. Dorian Thompson-Robinson sacked 5 times last week by the Bengals. Cleveland is just struggling every which way you look at it, stopping rushers. I love the entire Miami defensive front, and this is where I want you to tell me your play because I think we're on the same page on this one.
Oh my gosh, it's almost like we cover IDP and we're good tag team partners on this podcast because I too am picking a defensive lineman from the Miami Dolphins, although this time it's specifically a defensive tackle who still qualifies as a defensive lineman, who even in defensive lineman leagues where you don't have defensive tackle and defensive end specificity, I would still pick him up and start him this week. I wrote about Zach Seiler over in our IDP waiver wire article this past Monday as a great ad for fantasy managers looking to play keep away from other managers or looking for that final edge over their opponent during championship week. Seiler has been the DL7 according to Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, averaging 12.9 points per game over the past 5 weeks. During those 5 weeks, he has tallied 18 total tackles. Now, again, this is an interior defensive lineman whose job is basically to suck up space and then eventually try and break through the tackles and the double teams and get to the quarterback. He has tallied 18 total tackles, 10 solo, 8 assists, 7 tackles for a loss, so he's getting into the backfield, 9 quarterback hits, so he's hitting the quarterback, applying pressures, 6 sacks, and then played all those metrics over the past 5 weeks have placed him in the top 10 amongst all defensive linemen, whether you're an edge rusher or a defensive tackle, in each of those categories during those 5-week period. He leads all Dolphins in defensive along the defensive line in sacks, and like you said, JT, the Browns are near the top of the league in sacks allowed to the quarterback. Like any piece of this Dolphins defensive line, it's just yes, give me it, all of it. I need it injected into the veins.
I love it because I was debating between Chop and Steeler. Those were the two guys I was looking at. I was like, man, I could take both these guys. So I'm glad you brought him up because I was going to mention him anyway because I was going to say I love both these guys. I just think this is a great matchup. And again, a team giving up 4, 5, 6 sacks a week. So it's not like I think both these guys can get home and have a chance to get more than 1 sack even. So I love them. I would play them both. Even if you have them on the same roster, I wouldn't even hesitate. I just think this Miami team is way on the outside looking in. They need a million things to go for them to win this game, but I think they're going to come out and play hard and try to get a win here this week. Try to keep themselves in the playoff hunt. But I love this defensive matchup for the D line for Miami going against the Browns.
All right. Well, we gave you our pro Dolphins plays at defensive line. JT, who is your fade at defensive line this week?
So my fade on the D line is going to be Will McDonald from the Jets going at the Bills. McDonald now has had a really good season, so don't want to rip on him as far as that's concerned. Guy has been tough, 10th in the league with 10 sacks. I mean, just a great breakout year. So why am I considering playing him? A guy that's got 10 sacks. Why are you not playing him in the championship game? He doesn't have a sack in 3 straight weeks. Now he goes up against the Bills offensive line. It's playing almost better than any O-line in the league right now. They've only given up 1 sack in the past 5 games. Not 1 sack a game, 1 total sack in 5 games. I just don't think that McDonald gets home against them this week. The Bills are just playing too tough. I don't want to take a chance because you're really throwing a Hail Mary up there that he's going to get one. If he gets one, he does. I'm just not playing those odds. Josh Allen's playing too well. The O-line's been playing too well. I don't want any part of that. It's like the complete opposite of the Dolphins. I want everybody on the Dolphins D-line. I don't want anybody on the Jets D-line this week.
Totally get it. Fit check over here in the YouTube chat just said, hey guys, just subbed and then asked for an offense question. So first of all, thank you for the sub. We really appreciate that on our YouTube channel, as well as a follow across all of our social media channels. Thank you very much for that, folks. But so for mine this week, it's funny, you mentioned it, it's the same game, just different sides of the ball. I'm fading Gregory Rousseau, defensive lineman, edge rusher for the Buffalo Bills. And this kind of ties into the Money Mirage statement that I had earlier. Do you trust previous performance or do you trust recent trends? And here it's a combination of both. In that the last time the Bills faced the Jets this season, Rousseau only tallied 2 pressures, 1 quarterback hit, and 0 sacks. Conversely, over the past 3 weeks, right tackle Morgan Moses for the Jets has only allowed 3 pressures, 0 sacks. We're seeing Aaron Rodgers getting a little bit more mobile as the season has gone on. The protection, at least at the right tackle position, has been there. So it could be a long day. It could be a long day for Greg Rousseau just because, again, past performance history against a divisional opponent, plus how right tackle Morgan Moses has been playing as of late and has been playing pretty consistently all season long, to be honest with you. Just great at not giving up pressures. So, again, we call these plays and fades. We don't call these start and sits. If you have nobody better than Gregory Rousseau, I'm not saying, well, play somebody who's, further down your pecking order than Gregory. So if you have no choice to play him, but you should probably be fading your expectations of him this week. So that's where we go with our plays and fades. So,
Jorge, I was going to bring up just a perfect example of that in one of my leagues. I've got McDonald and Rousseau. So I'm looking at both those guys going, ooh, do I play one of them? Or my next thought is, do I jump out on a limb and take like a guy like Adebayo for the Colts going against the Giants, or maybe even a Trayvon Walker against what's been a fairly poor Tennessee offensive line? It's like I usually would lean those other guys, but looking at matchups and looking at the way, things have kind of lined up, I'm like, ooh, do I want to take a little more of a shot on a guy like Adebayo or a Walker as opposed to Rousseau, who's a guy I would typically start every week, or a McDonald, but I don't love the matchup for either one of those guys this week. So I definitely know how people are, because that's where I'm at. My thought process too is like usually Rousseau would be a guy I would start pretty much every week, but I'm leaning matchups now. I'm like, ooh, should I take a shot at like an Adebayo who hasn't been playing a huge snap percentages, but played well lately, or like a Walker going against Tennessee, because he's kind of been like hit or miss this year as well. So, these are the type of decisions we're all making. So we're trying to do our best to help you guys out. So yeah, that's one of those. If you guys have somewhere like that, yeah, do it. If you have somebody like much farther down the list, then maybe you play so anyway. If you don't have another good option, I think you're right on that.
All right, so just to round us out here in terms of our plays and fades at defensive lineman for the week, JT Chop Robinson, defensive end of the Miami Dolphins, going against the Browns. Mine is Zach Sealer, defensive tackle, defensive lineman, going against the Browns also. And, of course, we just had Will McDonald of the Jets versus the Bills, and Greg Rousseau of the Bills going against the Jets as our fades. Let's get into the linebacking position, one of the most popular positions in all of IDP Fantasy Football, because they score a lot of points. JT, since you took the lead here with defensive lineman, why don't you take it for linebackers? Who's your play at linebacking position this week?
Yeah, a lot of linebacker injuries crushing here at the end. Oh, a lot of these guys is tough. The one guy I think is just a smash play. And if you're in a league where I'm in a couple leagues where you don't start as many defensive players and you're really picking from the best of the best in your group, if you're in that type of situation, I'm playing Blake Cashman, Vikings versus the Packers this week. Cashman, 12 tackles, 9 solo, pass defended in week 16 against the Seahawks. Ever since he came back from injury in week 10, Cashman has been a double-digit scoring machine, 6 out of the last 7 games. According to Fantasy Pros scoring, he has hit double digits, 6 out of the last 7 games. He's averaging 13.8 in that span, Fantasy Pro scoring. If you're in a high-scoring defensive league like me, he's averaging closer to like 25 points a game in that span. So he has just been an absolute tear, and a guy playing great against a Packers team that is running the ball well and wants to run the ball. Cashman's been about as consistent as you get. I just love this matchup going against the Packers. I think this is probably going to end up being most likely the game of the week in the NFL. I think this is going to be a great matchup going against each other. Cashman, I think, is an absolute smash play this week.
No, 100%. I mean, just super consistent all year. The snap percentages have been there for Cashman, Minnesota, excuse me. For the most part, has one predominant linebacker, and they basically have been using Josh Metellus as the de facto defensive back, safety, hybrid linebacker there in limited snap percentages. So 100%, and not to mention, if you were lucky enough to pick up Blake Cashman earlier in the season and you've been riding with him, and there's no reason to think that you should get cute and try and sub somebody else in who you may have as a higher valued or ranked linebacker. The guy he's just been delivering nonstop. So 100% agree. For me, my play here, and again, my plays and fades, spoiler alert, are for people who play in deep leagues, because, there's a lot of people who play in shallow, and we get it. But this play in particular, even in a shallow league, I'd still feel okay. And it's kind of like a gamble. It's definitely a gamble because it's like, whew, okay, are we doing this? Are we doing this? We're doing this. And it's one of those things where I would feel okay personally if I was a fantasy manager saying, you know what, let's do this. Let's effing rock this thing. Because last year in one of my leagues, I won the championship, and I won on the back of Kaliki Hudson of the Washington Commanders at the linebacker position. He does not play for the Commanders anymore. I don't even know if he's playing anymore in the NFL. I'm sure he is somewhere, but he's far from starting. The point is, what I'm trying to say is, it's hard to ignore snap percentages and productivity. And when you're the linebacker one for your team, it makes you start that guy if he's been playing really well and has been super efficient. And that is, and we talked about him earlier, linebacker, New York Giants, Darius Vassell, playing 100% of snaps the past few weeks. It's clear that he's the clear-cut LB1 for the Big Blue. In Week 16, we saw him lead the linebacking core in defensive snaps and tackles, finishing as the LB20 in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring with 13.8 points on 11 total tackles. Bobby Okereke, like we mentioned earlier, and a couple of weeks ago, out for the season. The Micah McFadden experiment, sorry, it's over. We saw his snaps drop from 100% or close to 100% down to like 50 or 40, with the Sal's staying high at 100%. He is the guy there. I would feel pretty comfortable starting him in my lineup, especially if it's one of those, like, I need upside of the linebacker position play him. Definitely play him. JT, who's your fade at the linebacker position?
Yeah, I love that call by you. It's a different if he was like this was his first weekend, but we've seen him, and actually as you're talking about him, I just picked him up in one of my leagues because
Nice.
I just noticed I have Walker, Dean out, and Tavai questionable in a league where I can start 5 linebackers. So I'm like, I really need to pick something up. So thank you for that advice. I just went and picked him up. I'm going to play him in a league.
Nice.
Thank you very much. My fade on this one, and this is a guy who I loved coming out of college, and I was so pumped that the Steelers took him, and I've just soured on him so bad over the last couple of years. Oh, I hate to say it, but Devin Bush for the Browns. Oh man, the Browns have not been good. We've talked about it. They've had injury issues all year at linebacker. Bush has had playing time, but it's been very inconsistent. His snap share, it's been all over the place. He's played anywhere between 39 and 57% over the past 5 games. He doesn't have a single double-digit performance in those 5 games. He's only got 3 double-digit performances all season long. And all 3 of those, he played between 72 and 93% of the snaps. Just can't trust him, even with everything that's going on there in Cleveland. I just can't take that guy, even with all the injuries and everything else going. I'm going and getting somebody else if I have to, and I'm playing him over Bush. The snap share has not been there. He's not been very productive this year, and the only times he has been productive is when he's gotten a majority snap share, and we've just not seen that the last 5 weeks. He's not a guy I want to trust in my championship lineup. I'm in a bunch of third-place games. I don't want to trust him in my third-place lineup. I don't want him in there. He just hasn't been consistent at all.
No, 100%. Let's be fair and let's call a spade, JT. He hasn't been consistent since he tore his ACL.
He's one of the few guys, you bring it up, great point. He's one of the few guys that injury just changed him as a player. I mean, he never fully recovered mentally. He was not as aggressive at all. I mean, he was a guy that I thought should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year. His rookie year, I mean, he was phenomenal that first year for the Steelers when they traded up to, I think, number 10 to take him in the draft. And then after the injury, he came back. He did not look like the same player. Watching film on him, as a former linebacker coach, it was just disgusting. I mean, just letting everyone come get him and block him, doing nothing to avoid blocks. I know every Steelers fan I know was just damn near cheering for joy when they got rid of him, because it was just at that point you were just like, it's a lost sunk cost in him in the first round pick because he was so bad. And he's not been great anywhere else he's played. Let's be honest. That's why he keeps moving around. And like I said, he's had a couple good games this year, but he's gotten really high snap counts, and the snap count has not been there lately. So don't be fooled. Don't look at the overall points. Don't look like, oh, well, he's had some good games. He's not been lately, and he's not getting the share of snaps he needs to be. I mean, if you're playing him, you're absolutely playing the most gut feeling ever or something else, because I just can't see how you could trust him in your lineup right now. But you gave a great point. The injury just derailed his whole career.
Before we get to my linebacker play or fade, rather, Summer has a question. What's up, Summer? Championship week, need 2 linebackers out of Jordan Brooks, Diane Henley, Fred Warner, Darius Masau, who we just talked about, or Blake Cashman. Again, this is like the rich of riches right here. Like, who do you?
This is like, these are the times where it's like, it's tough because you're like, gosh, I love so many guys in this lineup, which is so much better than the weeks where you're trying to find anyone to play because everyone's hurt and it's bye week central. Well, these ones are tough because these are the ones that you kick yourself if you get them wrong. I already can tell you my number one's Cashman. I told you I think he's an absolute smash play this week, and this is one of those situations I saw him. I was like, I'm sure most people are playing him, but you're obviously loaded. Cashman's number one for me. Oh, number two's tough. Who do you think? Who are you in on here, Jorge?
So for me, the name that I can cross off the list is Fred Warner. I just feel with the ankle fracture and just Drake Greenlaw is starting to come back, and then there's something odd in that linebacking core for San Francisco, so that he's off the list. Love Cashman, love Henley, obviously love Masau. The thing I would jump and go Jordan Brooks here going against Cleveland. I just feel his tackle for is a little bit higher than most of these guys. But then it would be Brooks. So for me, if I had to rank them, it'd be Brooks, Cashman, Henley, and Masau.
I like that because I was going to go Cashman, Brooks, Henley as my top 3. So I think somewhere, I think in our mind, I think Cashman and Brooks are the way to go. That's who I would be playing.
Yeah, like literally for Cashman or Brooks, it's literally flip a coin and you're not going to be disappointed.
Yep, I think play those 2 guys. Yep, if you're picking 2, I'd play Cashman and Brooks.
Yep, there we go. Thank you very much for the question. And everybody else, thank you very much for tuning in for Shoot the Gap. All right, let's go to my IDP fade at the linebacker position. Again, talking, about the Dallas Cowboys. We saw last week Nick Vigil play. We saw Nick Vigil and Maurice Lefu from the University of Notre Dame basically take over the linebacking snaps with Leofau, leading the way with a majority of snaps. But even though he played 100% of snaps last week, he only had a 9.7% tackle rate on 7 total tackles for PFF. And that is against the Buccaneers team that kind of was running the ball a lot with Bucky Irving before they started getting blown out and were forced to start passing the ball a little bit more. Using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, however, over the past few weeks, he has averaged as the LB26, averaging 11 points per game. But a majority of these points are coming from a lot of assisted tackles. So, JT, the expression death by 1,000 paper cuts. I don't know what the equivalent expression would be, like success by, like 1,000 chops at a tree. Like you're trying to knock. I have no idea. Like, wow, I don't even know where that came from. But you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I know what you're saying. I wish I had a good one because I was like thinking about. I was like, man, I wish I really had a good one I could throw in there for you, but I don't know if I have one off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, you could get LB3 numbers out of him, but it's going to be painful to watch, and it's very possible that does not happen. He has been consistent, however, with that, very low double-digit production Fantasy Pros IDP scoring the past few weeks. But again, it comes from a lot of assisted tackles and impact plays, and I want somebody who has a higher floor for the solo tackles than I do assisted tackles. So I would fade your expectations for anything spectacular here for Leo, which, rookie first year linebacker, not all of them are going to be ready to go year one, and maybe he has something to play for, or obviously he has something to play for, but he's going to be better, his second year. But for right now, championship week, can't do it. Cannot do it. All right, let's get into the final position here. Defensive backs, plays and fades. JT, who do you got as a play?
This one's a little bit of a different play. And this is definitely if you're start QB cornerback league, this is my pick. But also if you're someone like me, I've got quite a few safety injuries right now, so I'm looking to some higher end cornerbacks to play this week, just because I have quite a few guys out. A guy that I'm liking is Darius Slay for the Eagles going against the Cowboys. Against the Commanders in Week 16, Slay. Big day, 7 tackles, 3 pass breakups, 16 fantasy points on Fantasy Pro scoring. And they're a little bit of a tougher scoring system. So he had 16 fantasy points there. Slay's been seeing a whole lot more targets this year with stud rookie Quinyon Mitchell on the other side. So it used to be everybody threw away from Slay. As he's getting a little older, he's actually becoming more playable in IDP because people are actually challenging him a little bit more than they used to. So he's a guy that's going to be in there. He's going to see targets. He's going to get a shot with pass breakups. And, with the news that CeeDee Lamb is out for the Cowboys, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if Cooper Rush is forcing a lot more into other guys just because he doesn't have the clear cut go to CeeDee, to bail him out. So this could get real interesting. I think even with Hurts out for the Eagles, I think there's still just a much, much better team. And I think they can get up with the running game. But I think Cooper Rush is going to have to maybe force a few balls. He's been great about not throwing picks this year. If he's going to throw them, I feel like this is the game he throws them. I think Slay's got a shot at getting one, but I also think he's going to have a decent shot at getting a pretty decent amount of pass breakups. So especially if you're in a league that gives pretty good points for passes defensed, here's where I would consider playing. Now, if you're playing a league and they only give you 1 point for pass defense, you might be able to find better options. But if you're in a couple leagues like me, so that cornerbacks are playable and they get higher scoring, we give them 3 points for a pass breakup. So if you get 3 out of them, that's 9 points right there. And then you're just hoping he gets a couple tackles as well. So I think Slay is a sneaky good pick as far as a guy. If you're looking for someone that's probably on your waiver wire, looking for somebody to go give up, definitely cornerback league. I'm playing him. I'm picking him up and playing him. But I definitely think if you're in a league that's starting like 3 or 4 defensive backs or maybe some flex spots, and you're looking for someone to play with decent amount of upside, Slay is an upside play for me this week.
I love it. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with playing cornerback in defensive back only leagues. Like it looks at the trends, look at the matchups, look at where on the field they're playing. Love that all. I love that completely.
And again, I always tell people, look at your scoring. If your scoring gives you pretty good points for passes defensed or pass breakups, he's been seeing a lot of targets. He's been getting 2-3 a game, which is a lot for a guy. And if you're getting 3, even 2.5 points, I mean, he gets 2 or 3 of those, you're halfway to double digits right there. Then you're looking at some tackles too. So I like it. And like I said, interceptions are really, they're a shot in the dark. But gosh, I could see him picking one off and taking it to the house this week. So he's a high upside play for me for that reason.
My start of the week or play of the week is Jordan Battle, safety defensive back, Cincinnati Bengals. On the season, the Broncos have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to the safety position. That's courtesy of IDPGuru.com. Battle over the past 3 weeks has tallied 22 total tackles, a TFL or tackle for a loss, an interception, and has been playing a majority of snaps for the Bengals at safety out of the box, aka closer to the line of scrimmage. since week 14 using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Battle has been the DB6 in solo tackles accumulated during that time, and his average due to his high tackle floor. Let me say that again. And his average due to his high tackle floor, 13.4 points per game. The second year player, there was so much like hype out of his rookie year last year. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Are they going to give him the keys to the car at the strong safety position or the box safety position? And then what do? They bring back Von Bell. They bring in, is it Geno Stone also? Like they bring in, these veterans, and you're just like, why? You're impeding the growth of these young players. And we've seen Jordan literally battle his way back into a starting role. And in the starting role, the guy has just been playing lights out. He is, for me, if this was like a couple weeks ago and he was doing this, he'd be set it, forget it rest of the season. He's definitely set it, forget it for week 17.
Yeah, I love this call. Battle's a guy, man, they were moving him around. He was like playing some cornerback, and then he was playing like slot corner, and I was like, what are they doing? I'm like, why is this guy not in there? I was so pumped about him in IDP coming into the season. And then it looks like they were going to screw him around. And then now that they finally have given him the safety spot, he's playing lights out, which is what you thought he would have been playing the whole time. I'm with you. Like I said, I can't believe they went and signed all the older guys, the veterans. But now that he's finally taken over, he has been absolutely great at safety. So I agree with you. I think if he would have been playing the whole year like this and got this kind of usage, he would be one of the top guys. He's definitely a guy that's going to be on my radar. He's going to be moving way up my IDP Dynasty rankings here in the offseason. I can tell you that for sure. He's looked great these last couple of weeks.
And for JT's IDP Dynasty rankings, don't forget to go over to DLF.com. A lot of love for the people over at DLF. And for mine, you can head over to fantasyandframes.com for all of our IDP Dynasty rankings. Let's get to our fades for the week. Let's get to our fades for the week. Who's your defensive back fade here, JT?
So my fade is Daryl Worley from the Titans. Cornerback there. He's living off that 17 tackle game he had for a couple weeks ago. People are still seeing that, like, oh, got to get him in my lineup. That's just not. He is not. It was a one-off, guys. It just was. He's got 5.3 points against the Colts in week 16. That's kind of basically where he's been at since he had that 17 tackle performance against the Commanders. I just don't expect it this week. Brian Thomas is not the slot receiver. He's the guy that's getting all the high-end usage for the Jags. Everybody else, it's just, you just don't know where they're going with it. Worley's basically been playing mostly in the slot. I don't like Worley at all. I know, if people are looking at it, they're like, oh, look at what he's averaged lately and do this and think, his numbers are way weighted to that 17 tackle game. He's not been doing stuff like that. So I'm not going to be enticed to play him, and I don't love the matchup against the Jags either. I'm out on Worley this week.
I got Charlene in the chat. What's up, Charlene? Better late than never. And folks, don't forget, between 9 and 9:15, the Daily Fix, our DraftKings DFS show with Keith Fleming, Joe Matz, and Kevin Tompkins will be getting you ready for all your DFS matchups here on the DraftKings platform here on Fantasy and Frames. For me, my defensive back fade is Grant Delpit, safety for the Cleveland Browns. Look, every single week, no matter whose rankings you look at across the board, Grant Delpit is always like in the top 20, 24. And, there's one reason why he is always ranked that highly, in my opinion. And that is his percentage of snaps in the box is consistently ridiculous. But what has that actually gotten you for fantasy purposes? Over the past 6 games, using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, he's only had double-digit fantasy points twice. During that time, during the past 6 games, has averaged 9.9 points per game and a whopping, and I say this sarcastically, 3.5 solo tackles per game. That's not good, folks. That is again purgatory. It's like purgatory leaning towards hell. Like it's just, you know, for a player who plays so close to the line of scrimmage is supposed to be basically helping and run support, not get you the tackle floor, an elevated tackle floor from what he's getting. It's very disappointing. And look, we're here talking about winning a fantasy football championship this week for your IDP leagues. I understand, you know, if you're rolling with Grant Delpit as your second or your third DB, and you're just like, well, he's been consistent. He's not been doing great, but he's been consistent. And you want to play it safe, but you know, be careful. You know, sometimes playing it safe could cost you when there are much better plays out there with more upside. Honest, no bullshit. Honest opinion. If I lost my matchup because I sat Grant Delpit, I would not be sad. I'd be sad like I lost, but not because of the Grant Delpit situation. Like,
yeah, it's not like he's been phenomenal or anything. It's you're like, oh, I like went against the trend. I mean, the trend is not really not to play him unless you just have to. Like you said, he just every time you look at him, you're like, man, why is he not scoring better for fantasy this year? Because like you said, the numbers are there, the usage is there. He should be, especially with their linebacker injuries and everything. You'd think he would be making more plays. He's just not.
Nope. All right. So to round us out here, that is for plays. JT has Darius Slade Jr. I have Jordan Battle. For fade, JT has Darryl Worley. I have Grant Delpit. And that brings us to our very last for the week, or for the year, I want to say, sack lunch. All right, folks, you know the rules. We're going to give you a player that we think is going to get you a sack this week. And after this week, we're going to go back and watch all the film here that we've done on Shoot the Gap, tally who's gotten the most right. And the loser next week will hopefully take a pie to the face, and we'll see what happens there. All right, JT, who's the player you're going to go with that's going to have a sack this week?
I couldn't remember if I've used them this year or not. So if I have, I greatly apologize. I didn't think I used them, but I'm going out on a limb anyway. I'm going with Kwity Paye for the Colts going against the Giants this week. He's got 5.5 sacks in the last 6 games. He's also added 22 tackles in that span. So he's been active. He's been pretty solid. 7 total sacks on the season. But like I said, he's been playing much better of late. Giants offensive line's been struggling. They're putting guys on IR every other second, it feels like, in this one. New York, 48 times they've been sacked this season, 5th most in the NFL. Drew Lock's been dealing with some ankle foot injury stuff. So he's usually a fairly, a guy that can move in the pocket and can move around and run a little bit. I think he's going to be slowed down a bit in this one. I like Kwity Paye to add to the number and get home again this week.
So my guy, I wanted it to be a Washington Commander, but I actually really like the tackles here for the Atlanta Falcons. But I'm going to stay in this game, and you would think for me, knowing how much I just love this guy's game, Matt Judon would be my pick. But no, it's going to be Arnold Ebiketie. He has been leading.
Oh, nice.
But he's been leading the total defensive snap share the past few weeks for the Atlanta Falcons. Last week in week 16, a 16.7% win rate, 12.5% pressure rate. We look back over the past few weeks since week 13. He's had 4 sacks on the season. He's sack or bust, basically, for fantasy managers. But I think he gets home, gets the Jaden Daniels this week, and which should be a really exciting Sunday Night Football game. So, yeah, Arnold Ebiketie, please do your thing. All right, that's going to do it for week 17, folks. It has been fantastic helping you each and every week, trying to help you get to this point of the season to win a fantasy title, and at the very least, have some fun playing IDP Fantasy Football. Next week, we'll be doing our kind of year in review wrap-up show before we take a little short hiatus and then come back after the Super Bowl to start going over some NFL prospect players at defensive on the defensive side of the ball. Before we get to all that, JT, is there anything you want to tell the viewers and listeners before we get out of here?
Just thanks for everybody joining the show, watching, commenting, all that. My first year here on Shoot the Gap with you. I've had a fantastic time. I love talking IDP. I've been playing IDP forever. I still have to explain to people what it is all the time. They're like, what are you talking about? Still trying to get people, more and more people into it all the time. I've converted quite a few over the years. So I appreciate everybody that pays attention to the show and is a fan of IDP. Because you and me both love it. So I just think it adds so much more to the game. It makes everything more interesting. I play in a ton of regular leagues too, so I'm not saying don't play in regular leagues, but I just love what IDP brings to the game. It's just a whole nother aspect to it. And as someone who's been a defensive coordinator for a lot of my life, I love to play the individual defensive guys. So I love to see them get some credit as well.
Speaking of getting credit, Charlene shouts out, thank you guys. Thank you very much, Charlene, for all your support. Jerry Bagshaw, great show, and thank you for your advice all year. Thank you very much. But folks, look, we understand a lot of you are redraft folks. That is the majority of people who play fantasy football. The casual. I hate using the term casual fan, but the majority of people like to play redraft. But for you dynasty junkies out there, again, we're taking a short hiatus and not long, but then we're going to be right back in here talking prospects. And then it's going to be combine. Then it's going to be Senior Bowl, not in that order. Then the free agency is going to hit, and then the draft, and then more dynasty, and then we get back to redraft, and then the next thing you know, we're right back here week 17.
We'll be right back in the season before you know it.
Yeah. So, folks, literally, there's plenty of content coming here at Fantasy and Frames. Up next, the Daily Fix with Keith Fleming, Joe Matz, and Kevin Tompkins, our DraftKings DFS show. Stay tuned here on all the channels here at Fantasy and Frames, whether you're on YouTube, X, anywhere we're broadcasting. Thank you very much for everybody this year. We truly appreciate you all. And for JT and Jorge, go win those titles.